Hello and welcome back to the channel. Now, have you ever been lying in your bivvy or your tent while you're solo wild camping and been just a little bit too afraid to go to sleep because you're worried that someone might attack you in the middle of the night? Or maybe you're just too afraid to try camping like that in the first place? Well, this video is all for you because this is going to be about how you can increase your personal security when you are kind of solo wild camping and hopefully give you that kind of warm fuzzy feeling so you can get your head down in the great outdoors. Before we start, I've just got to stress that I have acquired a particular set of skills that I've gained over a long career outdoors, and skills that allow me to avoid confrontation wherever possible. Because this isn't like a gung-ho type video, this is going to be about avoiding confrontation. And the strategies we're going to talk about are avoidance, deterrence, giving yourself time to react, actions on something actually happening, and then how to break contact. Now, the first principle we're going to talk about is avoidance, and that means not only not drawing attention to yourself, but actively discouraging it. Because if nobody knows that you're there, nobody can attack you. It's as simple as that. So what that means in principle is you don't want to be seen, you don't want to be heard, and you don't want to be smelt. So obviously things like lighting a fire, using a torch at night, or having a conversation with someone on your phone are really bad ideas because they can draw attention from quite a long way. Particularly light, which most people will be aware of, light can be seen for miles, but sound carries really a long way in the woods at night, particularly when there's no other background noise. So you really do want to keep your light and sound discipline in check and make sure that you're not emitting too many kind of broadcasters of where you are, because that will definitely let people know that you're there, and then that invites potentially unwanted attention. The second part to avoidance is actually your location, because you want to be camping where there are no people. And that's obvious, isn't it? Because if no one is there, there is no one there to attack you. So that's a really good thing to think about. Now, some people will do kind of stealth camping in cities and towns, and while that may be their cup of tea, I think that does leave kind of increased risk. So I won't do that personally. I would rather go somewhere deep in the country because I know there are no kind of natural predators in the UK that can take me on, not unless a local squirrel is going to attack me. So I feel quite confident there. It's really other people that I'm concerned about, so I will go where the people are not. My second line of defence in my personal security strategy is how I use deterrents, and that's all about making yourself look like you're not an easy target. Now, there are a couple of ways you can do this. Now, if you've got a big dog, that is a great thing to take with you because dogs quite often will put people off. Now, my Nova, she is big enough that most people would think twice before taking us on. But more importantly, if I'm walking her at night and somebody approaches or there's an animal around, she will let off a very deep and scary growl and bark, and that will put most people off almost definitely. Now, if you don't have a dog, there are still lots of other things you can do, and one of them is to use deception. So, for example, if you're sleeping under a tarp, what I would recommend is setting that up in a closed configuration, because if it's closed, people can't see how many people are under there, and that gives the impression that there could be more than one person, and then somebody is less likely to want to take you on if they're on their own. Another thing you could do, if weight is not sort of premium, is you could carry two tarps and set both tarps up, because again, that gives the impression that there's two of you rather than one, and it makes you look like less of an easy target. Now, if you use a poncho instead of a waterproof jacket for your kind of rainwear, you could set that poncho up as your second tarp, and then there's no weight penalty either. So that's definitely one to think about. Now, if you do prefer tents as opposed to tarps, then think about using a small two-man tent as opposed to a one-man tent, because again, in the eyes of the attacker, that gives the potential for there being more than one person in that tent, and again, makes you less easy of a target, or in their minds at least. And the final bit is, think about things like if you're on a military training area like this one, maybe use military tarps instead, because if I was set up here and I had two tarps up, people would just assume that I was part of a larger military force, and they wouldn't attack me because they'd assume there's some young fit warrior underneath, as opposed to some middle-aged podgy bloke out enjoying his hobby. So definitely think about how you can use deception to your favour and just deter people from attacking you in the first place. The third principle is to give yourself time to react should you get attacked, so you've got time to get to your feet and fight or flight depending on what's best for you. Now, there are a number of things you can use to give yourself time, and one of them is to use a barrier. Now, the barriers can be natural, so things like a fallen tree or a heavy bush, and probably the best way to show you that is I'll walk around and actually show you some examples. But if you can't find natural barriers, you can also use man-made ones. Now, a great example of a man-made barrier is something like a heavy-duty bird mesh. Now this is designed to stop small animals from sort of destroying crops and things, but it is incredibly tough. It's also quite lightweight as well. If I can get a roll which is 10 metres long by 2 metres high, that'll set me back about 15 pounds and it'll weigh about 460 grams. So it's very, very easy to carry, and you cannot tear that stuff by hand. I used to use it on my allotment a lot, and I've been caught in it a few times when I've been trying to sort of get to my veg and things. And it's good stuff. And the other beauty about that sort of mesh is from a distance, it's almost invisible as well. So, you know, people wouldn't be prepared to just kind of run into it, particularly at night. And that would definitely buy you some time to sort of get out your sleeping bag and get to your feet. Now, another thing you could use rather than bird mesh is camouflage netting. And camouflage netting, again, that has a mesh underneath. So that would also sort of definitely stop somebody, or slow somebody down, I should say, from getting to you. And also has the added advantage that it would camouflage you as well. And there is certain security in camouflage and not being seen. What I would say is for security purposes, you really want the net to be tight and tightly secured. That way, obviously, it's harder to get through. And for camouflage purposes, you want a camouflage net to be loosely draped. So you kind of need to make a choice between security or camouflage, and just choose your pick depending on what you're most comfortable with. Now, this little area we're in now is a good example where you can use natural barriers to kind of slow people down. We've got a fallen tree over my right hand shoulder. Again, it's not going to stop anybody, but it would definitely slow them down because it's something they've got to climb over or climb through. If I turn around this way, you can see I've got quite a thick bush here to the side, and again this would give me time this side. People could get through that, but they would definitely make a lot of noise doing it, and that would give me time to react. And then if I just go further along and look up, you can see there that this is a really quite a deep ditch as well, and it's kind of really deeper than it looks because that leaf is really deep in there. So you would kind of get lost, and that would definitely again just slow someone down enough to give you a couple of extra seconds to react. So it's all about the cumulative effect of the things you do around you, putting the things like tripwire to give you alarm time and give you time to react. Then again, slow them down as they approach. All vital seconds, all helps. Now, what I could do in this particular scenario is I've got trees. Say the tree is there and kind of there, these trees, and I could tie things like cord behind between those, and again that would just act as another barrier to slow people down. So this kind of quite densely populated woodland is really good for security as well, because while this is probably a bit too snaggy and a bit too messy for something like bird netting to kind of protect you, or a camouflage net, without it kind of getting snagged, what you could do very quickly here and with minimal tools is use microcord to kind of wrap yourself a little cord. Now that will take not very long at all. Now the cord I'm using is this, it's Atwood microcord, and this reel is 125 feet and it weighs about 35 grams. And it costs about £6. So it's cheap, it's light, and it's really easy to kind of use and employ. And I'll show you what this looks like and how quick it is. I won't do the whole perimeter because it looks like it's going to rain at any minute and I want to get home. But I'll show you what it's like to do a quick section, and then I'll just try and show you how effective it can be in trying to kind of slow somebody down. Okay, so just tie the end off against this tree already. Then all I would do then, just kind of wrap. Okay, and then if you wanted to put a fourth one on, you could do that as well. There we go. And then let me just tie that off. I'm not bothered, I'm not tightening this up, I've not kind of made it particularly taut, but that is very thin. It's 1.2 millimeters, and this Atwood microcord has a breaking strain of 100 pounds. So in theory, it should be quite strong. Now, if I step back, that's already starting to kind of blend and can't see it so well. In the dusk at night time, this would be virtually invisible. So let's say you and my camera are the kind of potential victim. I'm going to walk in and see if it stops me. Okay, dog's over there. That has definitely stopped me. I cannot move forward. I'm about 16, 17 stone. No, I'm not going anywhere. So I could get through eventually, I think. If I had a knife, I could cut it, I could push it down. But that's going to slow me down. That's going to give me time to get up, out of my sleeping bag, get the torch out, and start my actions on sequence. Another tool you can use to give yourself just a bit more time to react is to put out tripwires. And tripwires are good because they can be used in slightly more open woodland, as long as you have some trees to sling it between, obviously. And they would definitely give you time to react. And in the best case scenario, they may even deter somebody completely if what you've got attached to it is quite loud. Now, there are all sorts of things you can use to make the noise on the tripwire. It can be very, very simple, from what you're carrying, you get mess tins with a couple of pebbles, or your cooking utensils inside to sort of rattle when somebody hits the string, or it could be something you bring with you. Now, some good examples are things like the bells that quite often people put on dogs, because they're quite quite loud, should I say, and very light as well. So that's a good option. And you can also use a rape alarm as well, or a personal attack alarm sometimes it's called, because they have a pin on them, and when you pull the pin out, it really makes this loud sort of siren noise. So that's definitely one to think about. And I'll do a video on tripwires later on, because they do take a little bit of setting up, and I'll show you how to do that. The key thing with a tripwire is it's a real balance between putting them out far enough so that you've got enough warning to have time to react, and putting them out too far that you're going to get sort of false positives and false trips by things like animals and people walking past. So you do want to sort of think about where you set them, and ideally have them on kind of approaches and choke points where people can only be coming to your position, and that will just give you that extra bit of time. The fourth principle I use in all areas of my life, and it's called actions on. And all actions on it's a set of predetermined actions you're going to take in a given circumstance. And the beauty about actions on is it speeds up your reaction time, because you don't have to think about what to do. You already know what to do because you've thought about that in slow time, ahead of the situation. And then all that's left is to execute a well-rehearsed set of actions that are being kind of drilled into you, so it becomes second nature, and that massively increases your reaction times and gives you the upper hand and the advantage in any situation. Now, so when it comes to camping, you think about what your actions are going to be, if somebody was to come into your camp. Now, for me, it's obviously going to be to get to my feet as quickly as possible if I think they're, within a range that is becoming a threat. If they're not within that range, I'll just try and stay hidden and hope that they haven't seen me. If I think they're coming within range that they are a threat, I'll get out my sleeping bag and get to my feet. And then what I will do is I will use the tools that I have available, that I carry, to kind of go on the offensive and take the upper hand. Now, we've got to be careful here, because there's a difference between being offensive and being kind of defensive as well. So you do have to kind of be a little bit careful with what you do. Now, I don't want to be gung-ho about this. If someone was to put me in a situation where their decisions meant that only one of us were going to go home, I'm going to do everything in my power to make sure that person is me. And that is a sort of psychological preparation that I've done a long time ago, and I've made my peace with it. I've always said, it's better to be tried by 12 at a court than carried by 6 at a funeral. So I'm never going to go looking for trouble. I'm never going to kind of instigate that kind of combat or kind of confrontation. But if somebody else makes that decision for me, then they're going to have to deal with me, and I'm not going to kind of pull back. Now, for me, my primary response to somebody coming into my camp, if I think someone's going to attack me, is to challenge. And the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to do that nicely. So I'm going to say, can I help you? If they become aggressive, if they start approaching me in a way that I'm uncomfortable with, then that's when things turn and I start to go a little bit more of a hard defensive posture. So I use torches, and I think torches are a great way to kind of defend yourself, because they're distant weapons. People use light, you can use light to close somebody's eyes, because if they can't see, they can't fight. So what I would do is pull out my torch and I'd blind them. Simple as that. So when somebody's got their eyes closed and they can't see, I would then go in and do what I need to do. Now, hopefully that would change their kind of body language, and they wouldn't want to kind of continue. They'd realise that they were kind of had the disadvantage there, so hopefully that would be enough. If it wasn't, I would go in and I'd defend myself. Now, you don't have to wait to be attacked before you defend yourself. In the law, you are allowed to do what's called a preemptive defence. If you believe you're in danger or your life's at risk, then you can actually defend yourself. You don't have to wait for them to start swinging. You can do that first. Obviously, you just got to make sure of what their intent is, because if a dog walker walks into your camp and they're just walking through and you bludgeon them with something, then you're going to get into trouble. No ways about it. Now, Torches are really good because of the distance that it gives you, because you can close your eyes from a distance, but also they can be used close in as well. Now I have two torches, so I have my very lightweight, very bright torch, and the beauty of this is it's very bright, it's very light, and this is my kind of normal everyday torch. That will close from his eyes, fantastic. I also have its big brother. This is Mr. Maglite, and this is a 3 D-cell Maglite battery. This is not as bright, if I'm honest, but it is, very robust. The advantage of this torch is this is very heavy. It's very strong, it's made of metal, and it's got a nice comfortable weight about it, let's just say that. So, if anyone was to ask, I carry this torch for sentimental reasons. You know what I'm saying, don't you? In the eyes of the law, you're not allowed to carry a weapon for defensive purposes. If you carry a weapon for defence, that is classed as offence, and that will get you into trouble. You are, however, and this is really important, you are allowed to defend yourself with anything that you're carrying, but you've got to have a justifiable reason to have it. Now, if I'm in the woods at night, I'm going to want a torch. That's completely justifiable. So having a torch like a Maglite is a perfectly justifiable thing to have on you in the woods, in the dark. The fact that it's a foot long, metal and very heavy has got nothing to do with it whatsoever. Now the way I would use this is I'd come back, I'd take it into my hand like this, I'd switch it on so it's shining right at the lens, and I'd put my hand out like this. And this creates space between your weapon hand and the person, and I'd say get back. So they've got fair warning. Now if they continue, that they want to come in and they want to make something of this, because it's already in the shoulder, your arms really draw back, it's a really simple motion to strike. And that took, microseconds. And I had to pull back because I was worried about hitting the camera. And this gives you just a little bit of extra reach, and obviously it increases your kind of strike capacity immensely. So this is a really good tool to have. It is there to see in the dark, it's a justifiable reason. It's at night time, you want a torch. And if somebody attacks you while you're holding it, you've got a right to defend yourself with it. So yeah, Maglite's really good tool to have. And the final principle to think about is how you're going to break contact if something happens. Now, a contact might not necessarily be, as aggressive or as kind of a physical confrontation. It could be you've had a run-in with a local who doesn't like you camping. It could be a group of kids who are giving you issues. In those situations, I would say just break contact. It's not worth the risk. If someone's actually come into your camp in the middle of the night, I would definitely break contact, because even if the altercation ended up with them running off, it's just not worth the risk of them coming back, potentially with more people or even armed. So getting away is really important. So when it comes to breaking contact, there are certain things you can do, or there's good kind of admin practices in camp to make sure you get away quickly. The first one is to only have out the things that you're actually using, and everything else should be stowed away, ready to be kind of grabbed and got. The second principle is to keep everything in arm's reach. So obviously keep it close, don't have it sort of meters away where you can't get to it quickly. And thirdly, use things like quick release knots, or have a knife ready so that you can actually cut down your tarp if you need to, because at the end of the day it's just cordage, you can replace it. And I guess the final thing is, or not quite the final thing, but one of the final things is be ready to abandon your kit as well, because at the end of the day it's just stuff, and it can all be replaced. It can all be replaced. The one thing that can't be replaced is you. So if it comes to it, think about abandoning your kit if you need to. Your safety comes first. But if you can have everything in a state that's ready to be packed, and you practice to get it down quickly, there's a good chance you can kind of do what you need to do to get away, or alternatively, it's not quite as serious as that. Just kind of pack everything and then break contact. Now the final thing is what you wear when you sleep as well, because if you're all these people all naked and you're there in your pants and nothing else, it's going to take you a long time to get ready, not only to sort of meet an oncoming challenge, but also to break contact. So unless I was camping miles from anywhere, like in the middle of a national park somewhere, I would be dressed, and I'd also have shoes on. I'll have what we call my bug out shoes. And that's just a pair of lightweight trainers or kind of water shoes that are comfortable enough that I can wear in my sleeping bag, and they're not going to cause damage to my sleeping bag, but they will protect my feet if I need to get out. Because if you're trying to bug out, you've got bare feet, it's going to be a bit of a nightmare. So think about how you can be ready quickly. So again, practice the actions on and the bug out, because they go pretty much hand in hand. Make sure you know how to pack your stuff away, how to get away, and it all should be golden. And apologies, I had to rush there towards the end because the weather looks like it's starting to take a turn for the worse, and I think it's definitely going to start raining again any minute now. So I'm going to bug out myself, I'm going to break contact, and I'll see you next time.